Then the next section that we want to speak about is the Nachash, the Nachash HaKadmoni. And the Torah says Nachash haya orum. The Nachash was sly, conniving, wily, whatever you want to use for the Nachash. Now, before we even examine the Nachash, just understand that this whole section of the Torah, it's one of the most first sections anybody learns. And there are several questions that the Meforshim ask about the Nachash. But, the idea of a snake speaking. And one of the explanations that I heard, obviously the Torah says the Nachash spoke, so the Nachash spoke. There are difficulties any way you turn over here, because if the Nachash spoke, and it was speech is generally a manifestation of intelligence, it does not mean every time people speak, they spoke intelligently. It just means that speech is a sign of intelligence. So on the one hand, if speech is intelligence, so why doesn't it say in the Klala, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu curses the Nachash, why doesn't it say that the Nachash lost his intelligence? Speech is the sign that a human being is different than animals. Human beings speak, animals communicate. They communicate either through whatever their instincts are to communicate, but they don't speak per se. Speech is the sign that there's a neshama in a body, and the child is trained from the early stage. The child is trained until the child can speak. Parents get all excited when kids say their first word. Ooh, he said a word. I don't know what you're so excited about, especially when it's a female, once they start, So they, people, but speech means that we are human beings. Speech means that we have intelligence. Animals can't speak. Animals live on instinct. So the Meforshim ask a very interesting paradox over here. On the one hand, if this Nachash spoke and it was a result of intelligence, then that should show up in the Klala. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu curses the Nachash, say, well, you lose your intelligence. That's the worst thing to lose. And so the alternative answer is, well, it wasn't intelligence, it was a miracle. Nachash spoke miraculously, just like Bilam's donkey. And the Meforshim point out the problem there is, but it says by Bilam's donkey, it says, Vayiftach Hashem es pi ha'osam, God opened the mouth of the donkey. So it should have said over here, God opened the mouth of the Nachash. So either way we turn over here, we run into a little bit of a problem. The Meforshim deal with it. But Rav Hirsch says that the Nachash is the animal in man. Every human being has a little bit of an animal in them. And the idea is that Chava is the first person who's Adam Chava are given a command. Don't. It's the first time, the first people. They're given a command. Don't. Now in the animal world, there's no such thing as an animal exercising restraint just for moral purposes. It doesn't happen. There's never been a tiger in history that was chasing a zebra to go eat a zebra. There's never been a tiger that suddenly stopped and said to himself, I really shouldn't do this. I'm behaving like an animal, right? That doesn't happen. Tiger's hungry, zebra looks good, tiger chases it, tiger eats it. There's never been a lion in history that wasn't going to chase a deer because he's worried, well, if I do this, I'll be fleishik, so I'll be having my coffee for 6 hours. There's never been a lion in history. There's no thought process over it. We do, because we're so intelligent. So we'll skip an entire fleishik feast because we want to have that much coffee and milk in our coffee, so we don't, so that's how intelligent we are. Well, I don't want to become fleishiks. You're not going to become fleishiks. It's not a conversion. You'll be okay. You'll be out of it soon. So animals have absolutely no thought process. The snake is the animal in man, and Chava faces a moral dilemma over here. The fruit looks good, smells good, tastes good. Now, why shouldn't she indulge? No animal in the animal kingdom would restrain himself under those circumstances. The Nachash is the animal in man saying, you're no more than a two-legged animal. Why are you draining a cup with morality and with commands and with issues? You're no more than a two-legged animal, so indulge, which is the world that we're surrounded by. What she's supposed to do is she's supposed to counter that by saying, no, you're right, it looks good, smells good, tastes good. Instinctively, I would like to partake, but I was told not to, and therefore, as a human being, I do have a moral code. That is what Rav Hirsch says is really what's going on symbolically, obviously, literally, on a literal level, in Mikriyot Sebedei Pshuta, and obviously the Nachash spoke for whatever that means. But for us, the Moser lesson, one of the Moser lessons is that we're always confronted by that. We mentioned last week about how, how all animals contributed to the human being. Did we mention that? How we didn't say Nasa, oh, wow. We mentioned Nasa Adam, that all animals contribute, human beings have all characteristics of all animals. So that we mentioned last week. So this is further the animal within us that is always trying to move us in the wrong direction. Now, there's another aspect over here of the Nachash, And that is, I think, again, tell me if we started speaking about it last week, there's still something that has to be added here. Very, very important. One of the more important things that I'll, at least you'll hear from me. The Nachash is very similar. Nachash is always a sign of evil. And even outside in non-Jewish literature, the serpent, the snake, nobody ever thinks of a serpent as a good creature. Probably, most likely because the introduction is that he's the sinner and he's the catalyst of sin. But the Nachash has many characteristics that are very similar to the Yetzer Hara that we encounter every day. There is a remarkable parallels between the Nachash and the Yetzer Hara. So I'll give you a few examples. I'll show you where they apply practically in life. Number one, the snake often sneaks up on people. People don't notice it. All of a sudden there's a snake, and Nachash sneaks up on people. The Yetzer Hara often sneaks up on us without us noticing. An example would be, you're standing, and you're learning your 2 halachas a day, and you're really careful on Shmiras Halashon and everything else. And all of a sudden you hear a tidbit of a conversation somewhere, and this sounds good, right? And this sounds really good, And anytime people are talking in whispers, that's good, by the way. If you ever have to tell somebody something private, stand right in the middle of the room and say it. No, but if it's in the middle of the room, how important could it possibly? If you're ever in a corner, that means it's juicy, right? So here I'm trying to avoid lashon hara. I'm trying learning my Torah. I'll do it everything I should, and it kind of sneaks up on me without me being inviting it. It all of a sudden it comes up and attacks me. Number one. Number two, it attacks in the most unprotected areas. The Nachash usually gets from the back of the ankle. The Nachash, a snake, bites in the ankle, the back of the leg, which is the most unprotected part of the body. It always bites down low. Usually bites down low unless a person encounters a snake in a tree, which means that we are in the areas where we are most vulnerable. That's where the snake gets us. There's certain areas that we're working on hard. Shmiras Halashon, I'm working on hard. In kashrus in my kitchen, I'm certainly working on hard. In bittul Torah, not bothering my husband, I'm certainly working on hard. There are other areas where I'm okay. It's Nias, styles, that sort of thing. I'm okay. I'm vulnerable. In that area, I'm vulnerable. It could be because of peer pressure. It could be because of advertisement. Whatever it is, I'm vulnerable. And that leaves that part of the body, that area unprotected. That's where the Nachash will sometimes attack. You could have a husband who's on his way home, and he decides, you know what, tonight I'm really going to be good. I'm gonna help my wife. I'm going to put the kids to sleep, and I'm going to do the dishes, everything. And he hasn't been so. He's been a little bit selfish, and he's been AWOL. And now tonight he's going to come home. I'm really going to be, I'm going to be a national hero. And he walks into the house, but supper's not ready. Supper should be ready, and it's not ready, and he gets upset. So he's fallen to the Yetzer Hara of anger. That was the emperor. He wasn't thinking about his anger right now. He was thinking about selfishness and being more giving. So he's fallen. There's an unprotected area, and he's fallen prey to that unprotected area. And that's why this week's parsha, as a matter of fact, Yaakov says to the Malach says to Yaakov, Lama zeh tishal lishmi. The Malach says to Yaakov, what do you want to know? Yaakov says, what's your name? This is the Yetzer Hara. This is Esav's angel. He says, Lama zeh tishal lishmi. The angel says, what are you asking my name for? If I be one Yetzer Hara right now, I'll be a different one tomorrow, and in 5 minutes I'm going to be a different Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Haras are all over the place. So you're never going to nail him down completely. That's now. The third area, which I think is possibly the toughest, is camouflage. I don't know if you. I personally, at a very young age, stopped going into the reptile house at the zoo. I don't like reptiles. They don't like me. I don't like them. Then you get once in a while you get these people who are snake people. They like snakes. They also like dikduk. I think the two go together. And they're these snake people. You get these reptile people. I don't like the reptile house, but once in a while you go into the reptile house. Sometimes I go in just to see how much I could take. You're looking in that glass thing, and you don't see anything. All you see is a tree, or you see next thing you know, there's the Nachash is looking at you. It's well camouflaged. That's why Kodesh Baruch Hu gave it that koach. A Nachash camouflages itself. Now, the Yetzer Hara is often very camouflaged. I will give you several examples. One would be, for example, looking at the filtered internet. Right? That is, there's camouflage. How bad could it be? It's filtered. It's got, what do you call it? Cigarettes are also got filters. We stay away from that. So. And it's very camouflaged because one thing leads very, very, very easily to something else. Number two, again, I don't want to go into I don't want to get into internet and technology right now. Number two, I was asked twice this week by Talmidim about young couples inviting other young couples for Shabbos. Right now, this is a very big issue. First of all, there's a question of inviting Bachrim for Shabbos. There's a question of inviting Bacharetz for Shabbos. And then there's a question of couples inviting couples. Now, I appreciate the fact that I tend to be a bit extreme in these areas. One of the reasons is because we see the fallout when people are not careful. I tend to be extreme anyway because I think it has to do with Yiras Shamayim. And first of all, a young couple in the Yerushalmer world, young couple, there's no such thing as having Shabbos. They're either at their parents or at their in-laws. That's how the Yerushalmers okay. Many people are here without their parents, here without family. Okay, so if you have family, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, whatever it is, that's the most natural thing to do. And then the young couple stays home alone. That's also sometimes important. I had a guy told me a few months after he was married, he cornered me and like he was sharing top secret information. He says, could I tell you, my wife and I have Shabbos alone, it's kind of boring, right? And I understood him right away because what happens is when a couple, we have this Hollywood thing in our head that the couple should just sit together and have this, this intimate romantic Shabbos, where you just stare in each other's eyes and you just, and everything is dreamy, right? And it doesn't happen, and especially because it's Shabbos and there are candles burning. But it doesn't really happen that way. So it's very natural that Shabbos you want to share. So we have to go with what's the least of all evils now. A young couple, to have girls over, seminary girls, first of all, if the seminaries call you up, by the way, and I teach in seminaries, but if I'm telling you openly, if the seminaries call you up and you don't want to have them open, you don't want to have them over, just say, please, we don't feel any guilt at all, number one. It's not your mitzvah, you are not mechuyev to have them over. It's the seminary's responsibility, and if you don't do it, somebody else will. Believe me, somebody else will. There's an expense over here. There are other reasons not to. If you don't feel like it, you just say no. And you can even ask the seminary to take you off the regular list. I found that works with surveys very well. Because every once in a while you get these surveys calls in Israel. We were on a survey list, or at least we used to be. And the lady called me up and said, "Hi, could I take a few minutes to ask you some questions?" I said, "Yeah, but it's 90 shekels for 10 minutes." She says, "What?" I said, "Well, I charge for my time, don't you? You're being paid, aren't you?" So I think we're off the survey list. The seminary calls you up. We're not interested. If I have time, I help them out on the surveys. My daughter loves it. She just loves answering. She just loves answering surveys. I used to answer surveys. I haven't got time for it now. Seminary calls you up. We don't feel like having girls over, number one. Number two, girls are a problem because a young husband, there are girls at the table. What do you have? What's he got to do with them? When I got married, my wife had some friends. They didn't have anywhere to go, really, so she invited them over for the first time. I went to my Rabbi. I said, how should I relate to them? Girls at the table, how should I relate to them? He said, relate to them as if they're onions. Right? That's all he said. He didn't explain. He didn't elaborate. He just said, pretend you're sitting with onions. Okay, that was very good. Okay, I sasam velo piresh. So, okay. Then you have another problem. The husband's sitting at the table, and then, it's for the soup. So the wife and all three girls get up to go bring the soup out. The husband's sitting here at the table alone, which I never mind. It's being a safer. It's better than anything else at the table. That's the first choice. The other choice is to have bachrim over. Now, the problem is bachrim are over. There's a young wife in the house. It's still more natural that the husband is there with the bachrim. The wife serves. She's half the time she's in the kitchen. She sits there. There should be no kind of direct conversation between the wife and the bachrim, and the bachrim should also know. There should be no direct conversation. It could be a wife could participate in the conversation. You could ask a question. If they're talking about something, oh, wow, are there really that many people in Cincinnati? I mean, you could ask a question, but it shouldn't turn into one of these, like a real conversation between you and another male at the table. And therefore, because of the circumstances that we're in, where you are alone and you don't have parents here necessarily, and you don't want to have a Shabbos alone every Shabbos, so it's the natural thing is to invite the bachrim over to the Shabbos table. Then the husband runs the table. The wife is not, we once had the bachrim over to Sheva Brachas in the Kala. The Kala was going to give a Dvar Torah at Or Sameach. A lot of things happened, but the Kala was going to give a Dvar Torah. I don't remember. I think she did. And it was totally and utterly inappropriate. A wife doesn't say a Dvar Torah at the Shabbos table. A wife doesn't say a Dvar Torah. You can participate. Let your husband shine. We'll talk about that in a little while. Now, couples is a no-no. Inviting couples is a no-no. When my older brother had his first child, it was the first grandson in the family. So my younger brother at the time was about 14 years old, I think. So, they came for a visit with the baby. Baby was about 3 months old. And my parents said to my younger brother, "Do you want to hold the baby?" I said, "Nope." So my dad said, "Why not?" So my brother said, "Look, nothing good could come of it. He will either spit up on me something worse on me. Chas v'shalom, I could drop him. Nothing good could come of it. Why should I hold him? That was his attitude. That's my attitude towards couples, inviting couples. Nothing good could come of it. Ooh, why did he say, my husband never says such a clever Dvar Torah. My husband barely knows what Parsha it is. Why is he seems to be so witty. And the other one's looking, what you're looking at the other guy thinking he's witty, and your husband is kind of, just sitting there. Well, she's thinking, wow, her husband is so refined. Why is my husband so loud? Right? The one you think is witty, she thinks is loud. And the one you think is quiet and unprepared, she thinks he's refined. And it works the same way for the men. There's food. Right? Oh, wow, these are good challahs. Every man falls into that trap at some point or other. Every man will stumble. As I told one of the ladies, I think last week, I have a point where I travel a lot. One of the things that I travel a lot, and I'm a picky eater, very finicky eater. That's the hardest thing for me to travel is eating. And I try to make a point never to eat home-baked goods. Anywhere outside the house, I try not to eat home-baked goods. So people think I'm very frum. Why shatter the illusion? People think it has to do with kashrus. Zero to do with kashrus. By my attitude, if you're hungry, it's kosher. It has nothing to do with kashrus. It's just that I realize if I eat the cake, nothing good could come of it, because one of two things will happen. Either it's bad, and therefore I shouldn't have eaten it. And if it's good, I may come home and say, wow, I was just at Plony's house. She made such a good apple cinnamon cake. I mean, never mind. and it's all, oh, you don't like my apple cinnamon cake? And then you're off to one of those. So why do it? Why do it? And so I don't need it. It's not like vital for my survival. Therefore, why do it? Couples inviting couples, you are inviting trouble. There's no question. You are simply inviting trouble. One husband is looking across the table. Wow, look at her sheitel. Her sheitel is so neat and orderly, and my wife's sheitel looks like the theoretical possibility of matter without form, right? And the other husband is thinking the opposite. He's thinking, wow, my wife's sheitel is so plain. Her sheitel is so creative, right? And then your husband eats something, says, wow, my wife never makes challahs like this. I mean, my wife's challahs, feel like they fell one, they're kind of heavy, these are like the anonei hakavod. And you end up with couples walking home upset. Why did you say this? Why were you doing this? Very little good could come of it. So if you must do it, number one. Number two, then you just get into the area of sneeze, the not sneeze. A cross conversation between a husband and a wife sitting at a table, it's like an intimate little party over here, is completely and utterly inappropriate. I've heard of couples that get together, they play Pictionary or whatever it is that they do things together, is completely and utterly unacceptable for serious B'nai Torah. Yeah, please.
What about with neighbors and specifically living here when you don't have any family and you're older, not old, but
older. Okay, so that it does get to a certain point where you're you and they're them, and I've lived across the hall from the same neighbors for over 30 years. I am Rabbi Plony. She is Mrs. Plony. There's no chit chat. Once in a while, if I see her in the hallway, ask her how her husband, that sort of thing. But it is essentially inappropriate. It's essentially inappropriate. And even in the business world, the rules that the Rabbanim give for the business world, a woman who's in the business world, they make the guidelines very clear. In the business world, there is zero conversation with male co-workers having anything to do with outside of work, direct work. The conversation could be good morning, you could be a mensch, you say good morning, and then you say, is that file finished? Were you able to type it up? That's right. There's no, how was Shabbos? What did you make? Let the secretaries talk about themselves. The secretaries take up half a Sunday morning talking about the food for Shabbos, right? That's not for you. There's no cross conversation over there. You can say Mazel Tov to somebody, ask him how his wife is doing, if you know the wife is something. That you could do. There should be no chit chat on a personal level. It's a very easy line to cross. And by the way, those of you, I don't know if any of you are in the workforce, I always tell ladies in the workforce, if at any point any man in any office ever crosses a line, I don't even mean what the vulgar things that go on in the world. He crosses a line that you feel this is not sneeze. You immediately get a male involved. You get either your husband or your father, somebody, whoever is a single girl, get your father involved, and it has to be made very clear to him that if you don't stop it, I will take legal action against you. It has to be very clear. One warning, and then you pound the guy. That's the way it has to be. So a couple, to invite another couple over, I understand the need. The only exception I could think of, the only exception I could really think of is, if there's a couple, they all grew up together in the same neighborhood, they've known each other since they're two, and that sort of thing. Okay, sure. Otherwise, it's not. Otherwise, it's really not. It's not certainly not lechatchila. Again, I'm very extreme about these things, but I'd rather err on the side of caution in a practical sense, besides the halachic sense, in a practical sense. Yeah.
No, another option I just thought of was a couple who's been married, let's say 6 years, and they're, the guy's really good friend just got married.
That's something else. But again, you're inviting trouble. Again, you're inviting trouble because it's a problem even for Rebbeim. We have a policy now. We don't have girls over ever because I have boys, and we rarely have boys over because I have girls. I have teenagers now. It's not fair to the boys, not fair to the girls. And if that's the matzav I'm in right now, so be it. My wife has always said, nothing in life is forever. No stage is forever. It'll pass. Right now, that's the stage. A couple that's married 6 years, they have 3 kids. You have a young couple in the house. It's dangerous because a mother of 3 children under 5 years old. So the mother might not be at her best at that point, and then in comes a kala, and men are men, and you can't, and she again, now it's not her shaitel that looks like matter without form, it's her, and it's just not fair. You're inviting trouble. So there are certain situations where we can't avoid it. We can't be helped. A niece is in Israel, or a best friend's daughter is in Israel. We have no choice. We have to invite them to their house. So we have a policy at home. We say, but you can't bring a friend. They'll call us up, a long-lost niece or cousin that I don't even know, I've never met. Hi, I'm here. I'm at Seminar Ploni. Could I come for Shabbos? Yes. Can I bring a friend? No. Nope. Well, you could come, but not. That's it. That's our policy. We're very strict about it. Other people are a little bit more lenient about it. As I say, I am extreme. But I'm right. So, yeah, please.
What about having yeshiva guys over? This happens to me sometimes. Having yeshiva guys over and having, let's say, a few older single girls that want to come. They're 10 years old.
We don't mix and match. No. Even if they're 20 years, even never. We don't mix and match. It's one thing if a girl's way older, way. But we don't mix and match. Sometimes people have bachar and bacharettes over at the Shabbos table together. As a mamish not ice gehalten. What is that? What do you think is going to happen over there?
Could you have, let's say, bachar and a couple, so like the wife has someone to talk to, and like the bachar.
Some people do that. I think that it's not a great idea because it just, again, for younger. I'm a realist, and couples, ladies who are younger. And they're bachrim at the table. So having another couple there just gives them more. That gives them more to look at. Gives the bachrim more to look at, not less to look at. And so yes, the wives have what to talk. Wife has what to do. That's not. It's not. What do you call it? And again, then you also create pressure on both couples. It's just a phone. Don't worry about it. If it's my wife, tell her I can't speak to her right now. You create pressure. You create pressure on the couples because now not only it's 2 couples in front of each other, it's the wife thinking, oh my goodness, look at all these people here, look at my husband and look at this husband, and the husband can look at my wife and look at his wife. It's not a good idea. What can I tell you? It's not a good idea. Okay. What has the fallout been? Oh, couples getting divorced, people being over on serious averas, nothing major. That's the fallout. Yeah, that's the fallout. That's the fault.
I'm just saying, the reason I'm saying this is because as many times as Rabbi talk about this, it just doesn't.
Well, it doesn't. We don't have to worry about.
Fruition. Most people in this community are having couples.
We don't have to worry about most people. We're only worried about ourselves. We're not here to correct anybody else. We're only worried about ourselves. We're only worried about ourselves. That's all. We're worried about each person's worried about themselves. That's I'm speaking to myself. Anybody wants to listen, they're welcome to. At home, nobody does. So yeah, at least somebody. So I'm just telling you what you have to be careful of. That's the camouflage. That's the Yetzer Hara's camouflage. There's another type of Yetzer Hara. Here I'll tell you. We rail about the internet all the time. I'll get to you one second. We rail about the internet all the time. We tell people it's dangerous. Don't have it in the house. Ask ladies. Lady says, yeah, but I have to have email. I got news for you. I gotta ask you a question. What's more important to you, email or your marriage? Just answer that question. Whichever one is more important to you, the two are not going to exist very long. You want email or you want a good marriage? We had a situation where one Avrech was caught by his wife at 2 o'clock in the morning. He had a regular Seder between 2 and 4 in the morning with the internet. Right? It's a filtered internet with all the precautions and web chaver and all the chaverim in the world. Right? All they call Yisrael chaverim. Right? So we've seen it, we've been there, and I'm telling you, it gets to the point where I've heard so much nowadays. We get so much of it, and I try to avoid. We get so much of it on a regular basis of addictions and that sort of thing. I don't even have a cell phone, so people argue. So okay, I'm talking to the walls. Nobody even understands. People think that I'm what do you call it? I'm what do you call it? I'm prehistoric. Okay, let them think. It doesn't bother me. But we're seeing it. We're picking up the bodies. We're picking the bodies off the ground. So we see what's happening. The one of the best guys in the yeshiva, from Mamish, so from this guy throws stones at cars on Tuesdays. He was so from addiction, right? It's endless. So I tell the ladies, you want a good marriage, keep the computer, keep the internet out of the house. Yeah, but I need email. Hold it for a few minutes. I need email. Okay, you need email. It's so vital. It's just so important for you to have email. How much you're willing to sacrifice your life, it's not worth it. So a person has to decide what's important to me. Could the two theoretically exist? Yeah. What are your chances? Your chances are not good, so why get involved with it? Okay. Now, somebody had a question back there, guy.
Back to couples meals. I heard someone that said their Rob told them that once you have 2 kids, then it's okay. So is there like a point where it becomes...
So I would say like this. I am not responsible for anything anybody else says. I am barely responsible for what I say. But I have a policy. I'm never responsible for anything anybody. I understand where he's coming from. That is mitzad the guests. That's mitzad the guests. If the bachrim are in the house, it's neshkefer a mother with 2 kids already, the game's over. But mitzad, to have couples, to have girls or couples in the house where the couple has 2 kids. There I'd say you have 2 kids, even if one kid, once a couple is schleppy. So if schleppy, I don't mean schleppy, they look schleppy. I mean schleppy, you're more established and it's like that sort of thing. Then it's okay. Again, a lot of this is a sense. A lot of this, and I think that you have been gifted with certain instincts, and you could tell, and you could see, and you could keep track of what's going on. But it needs to be monitored very carefully. It just needs to be watched and monitored carefully. I wouldn't say one rule for a certain amount of kids. I'd say it has to be monitored carefully. Okay, let me go on. There's another Yetzer hara that the snake is similar to, and that is a snake coils to strike. Right? When a snake coils, that means a snake is getting ready to strike. And what they tell a person to do, if a person ever confronts a snake which is coiled and ready to strike, there's only one thing a person could do, which is to not move. You freeze. You can't move. You can't even, I asked my brother who was going to be a zoologist, now he's a Talmud Chacham, but I asked him once, why can't I just jump back and start running? Right? And the answer is, which is the logical thing to do, right? Snakes coil, so just kind of jump and run. That would make the most sense. The answer is that snakes are so quick. A snake can lash out and bite somebody and be back to his position before you even know it happened. The snake is so quick, like that. In the minute you move a muscle, the snake he's out already. He's bit. So you have to stop. You have to freeze. There are certain times in life where a person has to stop, freeze, don't make a false move, because one false move and you will be ensnared by the Yetzer hara. I'll give you a couple examples. Imagine you're sitting at the Shabbos table with your mother-in-law, and or your sister-in-law. Sister-in-laws are sometimes even better than mother-in-laws. You're sitting there with your sister-in-law, and your sister-in-law takes a bite of gefilte fish, and says something like, "Oh, I see you're on a salt-free diet." All right, or something along those lines. So, or for example, your mother-in-law is over and she mentions how your challahs remind her of the Aron Kodesh, because the Aron Kodesh was very, very heavy also. And now there's a temptation at that moment. To respond. That moment you have to freeze. That's the moment you have to freeze. It's often with speech, by the way. I heard once about a couple. I read about it in a book, and I made the mistake of discussing it with my wife. There was a couple, he had a baby, so they went to a chasna. And the husband took the baby, like a 4-month-old baby. The husband took the baby and the carried on his side of the mechitza. The couple made up that they would meet at the bus stop at about 9:30 at night. They'd meet out at the bus stop. Okay, so the wife goes out to the bus stop. She waits a couple of minutes, and her husband comes striding over to the bus stop. And the wife looks at him, and she goes, "Where's the baby?" He goes, Oh, yeah, I'll be right back. And he runs back. He forgot the baby at the chasna. And Rabbi Pliskin was pointing out, to her credit, she didn't say a word. She didn't say a word. I can imagine. So I said to my wife, I said, I told my wife, I said, theoretically, I mean, what if that would have been me? And I mean, what if that would have been me? My wife said, you don't forget babies. I said, yeah, but what? You don't forget babies. I said, but imagine here, babies are not a sack of sugar. You don't forget babies. So that is and my wife's not a toughie, by the way. My wife is not a toughie at all. But there's something about babies that she's very careful with. I just gave it to my daughter. My grandson was in the house, and my daughter was just outside. We were on the ground floor. She was just outside on the street schmoozing with somebody. Mamish by the window, and I walked in, and there's the baby, just me and baby, which anyway grandfathers want to avoid. But there's baby, and he's 5 months old. I said, I said, would you get in the house? She goes, well, I'm right over. Get in the house. And I let her. And I just said over and over, you don't leave babies alone. Yeah, but Daddy, I'm right. You don't leave babies alone. I just went on, and maybe I've been traumatized from my wife with the sugar, but you don't leave babies alone. Babies are, So that is a situation in life where often a person might be one false move, and you're finished. One false move, and on a spur of the moment, there was a guy in a supermarket in Israel. They had it was interesting, halachic shaila, they had a mivtza. What is the English word for mivtza? I don't know, a promotion, something like that. We use it for kids at the early, we have a mivtza, guys. Anybody who cleans up their room, you get a brownie, we have a mivtza. That's a big Hebrew word. The two words in Hebrew, they're big words. There's mivtza and mivater. Those are the big words. Livater, you have to be mivater, you have to give in, mivtza. So my mivtza is, guys, clean the room. That's a mivtza. My wife, the other mivtza is mivtza. You get a star, you get this, 7 stars, and you get that. That's a mivtza. So they had a supermarket where they had a mivtza, where when you paid, you got your receipt, your receipt for whatever you paid for your basket of goods. You wrote your name on it, and they put it into a drawing. And at the end of the week, Friday, they had a drawing, and whoever's receipt came out automatically got their basket of goods paid for, whatever your basket of goods were. So there's a guy who's in the line, and he's got a basket of goods, and his receipt came out to about 500 shekels. The guy next to him had a receipt, he saw the guy got a receipt of 1,000 shekels. So he realized the other guy hadn't paid attention to how much his receipt was for. So what he did was he just quickly changed the receipts, took the 1,000 shekel receipt, wrote his name on it. And then the other guy took his receipt, wrote his name on it. Well, you know how these stories always end. Of course, the guy whose receipt was switched with, the guy who is now holding the 500 shekel receipt, right? That was the one that won in the drawing. So then the first guy who had pulled the deception to begin with, he comes to the Rav and says, well, actually, that was my receipt. So I'm the one, I'm entitled to the money, which he wasn't. But the problem was, it was a momentary reflex. In a spur of the moment, sometimes you're in a supermarket. You ever happen to you where you touch something in the supermarket? Oh, wafers, and your thumb goes in, so you quickly pull it away. Now, at that point, you're chayv to pay. I didn't know that it was gonna. You took something off a shelf, and oh look, new potato chip, and you quickly put it back. That moment, you have to freeze and stop. What am I supposed to do right now? What do I do right now? What is the halacha right now? That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, sometimes just stop. Don't move. One false move, and you're finished. There's another Yetzer Hara where the Yetzer Hara, where a boa constrictor wraps itself around. A boa constrictor is one of those big, those big snakes that wrap themselves around people. Sometimes we feel that we are simply overwhelmed by the Yetzer Hara. We're absolutely overwhelmed by the Yetzer Hara. I just had one of the other Rebbeim in the yeshiva told me that he was in one city, and he had to go to Chicago. And there was a bacher from the yeshiva whose parents he wanted to meet. The parents lived in a different city. They happened to be in Chicago for the weekend. So he said to the bacher, he met the bacher in Chicago, and he said, I've never met your parents. I'd like to meet your parents. She said, well, they're not home right now. So he said, okay, so where are they? He said, well, they went out. So he figured they went out to eat. And, he said, okay, so I'll go over when they come home. How long can you stay at a pizza shop? So then he said, the bacher said, no, it's not going to work out. He said, why not? He said, well, they're going to be home late. He said, why? He says, well, they're out of town, so they decided they could go to a movie. Right? That means in their own community, they wouldn't go to a movie. But once they're in Chicago where nobody knows them, then the couple could sneak off and they could go to a movie. Nobody's going to see them going to a movie. So, sometimes and then people wonder, and why is the bacher not motivated? Because the bacher sees the whole Yiddishkeit's a bluff. By his parents, it's a bluff. They're only from because of peer pressure. But once you're away, Hashem isn't in Chicago. So then you could go to a movie. The kid sees that also. The kid picks that up also. So if Hashem's not in Chicago, so why, my parents don't care, so why should I care? So we got to go deal with the kids. But for the parents themselves, you're in a situation, something like the Yetzer Hara is so overwhelming, it's so powerful, it's so tempting, you feel that you're being crushed by a boa constrictor. Those are the similarities between the Nachash and the Yetzer Hara. Torah says, in Per Gimel Pasuk Vav, the Torah says that after Chava ate the fruit, she goes and she gives it to her husband. And Rashi points out something very interesting. Rashi says, why did she give Adam the fruit to eat? Why after Chava did she eat? If she ate the fruit, then she gave it to her husband. And so Rashi says, she was worried that maybe she'll die and he'll marry somebody else. So she figured, well, if I'm going, he's coming with, right? So Chava decides to take along Adam with Adam. If she takes a bite out of the fruit, and he says, uh-oh, if I die, he may, I don't want to be the only one over here who's going to die, so I'll take it with. That's what Rashi says. It needs an explanation, what it means. Obviously not on our level. But there's an idea here I think is a little more nogea to us. And that is, the Meforshim asks like this. Before she took a bite out of the fruit, what did she think? Before she took a bite out of the fruit, what did she think? She was absolutely sure that it's okay. Otherwise you'd be a fool to go and take a bite out of a fruit if you think that there might be a problem. I remember when Tylenol, nowadays, some of you probably were not even born. Nowadays, all medicines have a seal on them. When you buy a jar of medicine, you have a seal. You know when that started? That started in the early 80s. It started in Chicago, actually. It was innocent in Chicago. There were two paramedics. They came home at night. They went bowling one night, two paramedics. And one of them said, anything happened in your shift today? Anything interesting? He says, well, no, the only thing is we found a young lady. She was dead, and there was like a jar of Tylenol near her. The guy goes, that's really weird. It happened to me also. A young guy, some guy died, and there was a jar of Tylenol. That's when they did they investigated. They found that somebody had put cyanide in the Tylenol. They had taken open the thing, capsules of Tylenol, and they had managed to put in cyanide. Somebody was protesting probably to save the whales or something. So let's kill people to save the whales. I don't remember what it was exactly. They poisoned the Tylenol. I was living in Israel, Maldaft at the time. I think it was our first year of marriage. I was living in Israel, and I immediately went to the bathroom. I didn't hear anything else about the story. I took my jar of Tylenol and I flushed it down the toilet. I didn't even have capsules. I was 6,000 miles away. These were pills, which you can't put anything in. You can't even put anything in a pill. I was worried I'd get up in the middle of the night and I'd be sleepwalking and I would take some Tylenol, even though I know I shouldn't, something like that. Like one of those Yom Kippur night dreams where you're always worried I'll wake up in the middle of the night and take a drink of water. And so you put a sign on the sink, don't drink, it's Yom Kippur. But then you got to remember to read before you drink. And so I immediately poured out. Why? Because just hearing cyanide, Tylenol, my goodness, okay? Now, if a person really thought that there was a problem, so they would avoid it. So if Chava ate the fruit, so obviously she didn't think there was a problem. So why, as soon as she ate the fruit, once she indulged, then she turns around and she goes, oh boy, what if I die? I better give him so that he doesn't marry somebody else. Otherwise I'll die, he'll marry somebody else. That's no good, I'll take him with me. Okay? Now, what's going on here? So the Forshim explained like this. Imagine there's what do they call those guys? The Poritz. In Europe, they had the Poritz, was the Goyish landowner who used to, people would become sharecroppers and they would invest, they would take over a piece of land, but the land was essentially belonged to the Poritz. So there's a Poritz, he's an anti-Semite, and he belongs to an anti-Semites club. And this Poritz, Ivan, has a Jew living on his property, a Jew who owns a piece of land, who's working a piece of land. And this Jew has the rare ability to be able to predict the future. Jew could tell the future. And Ivan goes to his annual meeting, and he goes to Igor, who's the head of all the anti-Semites. He says, Igor, I have a Jew living on my property. This Jew could tell the future. Igor does not like the idea that anybody in the world has something that he doesn't have. So Igor immediately dismisses it. He says, there's no such thing as being able to tell the future. Nobody can tell the future. As a matter of fact, you bring the Jew to the meeting next year, and I will prove to you that nobody can tell the future. He says, okay. The next year's meeting, annual meeting. He goes over, he says, Yankel, you're coming with me. We go to the meeting. So walk into this big tent. All the anti-Semites are there. And Igor is sitting up at the front. There's a big stage. And as soon as Yankel walks in, he says, you, Jew, get over here. Yankel walks up to the stage. Igor says to him, listen, Jew, They told me you could tell the future, and I claim nobody could tell the future, and I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to ask you one question, okay? It says, what day are you going to die? Now, Igor has a plan. If Yankel says that he's going to die anytime in the future, Igor is going to say, wrong, pull out a gun and kill him on the spot. And if he says, I'm going to die today, Igor is going to wait till Shkia, tell him, you see, you were wrong, and then kill him at Shkia. So Yankel is standing there, and Igor says, Jew, I asked you a question. What day are you going to die? Yankel goes, what day am I going to die? What day am I going to? I'm going to die on the same day that you die. So Igor reaches for his gun, and all of a sudden he freezes. Some guy, what's wrong, Igor? What happened, Igor? Come on, Igor. And he goes, well, let's not do anything hasty over here. I'm not so sure if I don't know. What happened? A minute ago, you were absolutely sure nobody could tell the future. You're positive nobody could tell the future. Now, all of a sudden, you have some doubts. What happened? The answer is one thing. You became personally involved. Once you became personally involved, you're a nogea b'davar. Once you're a nogea b'davar, you lose your objectivity. In life, we are very, very objective until we become personally involved. And a person has to know when they're a nogea b'davar. So, for example, in Beis Din, even in Beis Din, the greatest dayanim, the biggest tabid chachamim, the most refined people, there's a halacha that a dayan is not allowed to judge a case if he feels he cannot retain his objectivity. If a dayan says first of all, if they're related to somebody, they're puzzled to begin with. But let's say two Jews come to Beis Din. One is a guy from down the block, and one is the dayan's next door neighbor. Then the dayan has to know, is my relationship with the next door neighbor such that I will not be able to retain my objectivity, and then he has to take himself off the case. He may be mechuyev to take himself off the case. So a person in life, often there are situations where we're nogea b'davar. Nogea b'davar means we may have an objection to something until we're in a situation where suddenly we want to rationalize. We may be in a situation where up until this point, really it's not, it's not Beseder, we're not going to have couples over. But then you find out that there's a couple on the block and you have something to gain from them, whatever it may be, and you know that they're being really good Shabbos gifts because you've heard that from somebody else who had them over. They bring silver or golden Shabbos menorahs. And something really good, and you say, you know what, Kaplan's an extremist, let's invite them over, it's a mitzvah. All of a sudden it turns into a mitzvah. You become a nogea b'davar. That's what a person has to always watch, has to be very, very careful for. So I always tell the men, a man needs a certain amount of time to relax. A man has to relax, especially a husband sitting and learning. How much time, there's a very big difference between how much time he needs to relax and how much time he wants to relax. When I come home at night, I need to relax for about 10 minutes. I want to relax for about 3 hours. Now, how do I make that determination? The answer is the husband can't, the wife has to. Right? The one who's not nogea b'davar is the one who has to make the determination. A person who's nogea b'davar and gives somebody else bad advice is over on lifnei iver lo sitein michshol. I've got a negia. Somebody says to you, I saw a house. There's a 5-room dira in Ramat Eshkol for sale for $40,000. Do you think I should buy it? Oh, no. $40,000 for 5 rooms around Matishko. Terrible idea. Probably falling apart. So they walk away, and then you go and you run and buy it because you were a nogea b'davar. Right? Before anything, you're a nogea. Person has to know you have a negia. When you have a negia, everything changes. Chava took a look at the fruit. She said the fruit is fine. Why did you paskin its butter? She's mora heter. Why was she mora heter? She's nogea b'davar. She wanted to eat the fruit. Once she took the fruit, now she regains her objectivity. I've already indulged. Now I've seen what it's like. Now I have to decide, what about him? What if I die? Now I could think clearly. That's the idea.